Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Estonia's local elections have drawn international attention, not only for political shifts in Tallinn, but for what they reveal about identity, security and resilience. Nearly 72,000 non-EU residents, mostly Russian speakers, have lost their right to vote amid concerns over Moscow's interference. At the same time, border tensions have escalated after unmarked armed men were spotted near the Satse boot, prompting Estonia to close the transit route for safety reasons. Joining me is Dr. Louis Wierenga, lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defence College. I beg your pardon. Dr. Wierenga, welcome back. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's start with the local elections. How meaningful are they, and what does this mean for Estonia's political landscape?
Well, these are in many ways a stage setter for the next national elections, which will take place in March of 2027, because there is a slight shift, as there typically is. I mean, it's almost getting to a point where you can't quite say that it's solely based on two political parties, Reform or the Center Party. We'll see. I mean, we'll see how the results take place. But right now, Isamaa, or the Fatherland Party, is coming out hot. We should know around midnight tonight the results of the municipal elections. The e-voting results should be released around now, and then there'll be a recount which will take place tomorrow for the e-voting. But this was the second highest turnout, and I think that really sends a message. There's close to 60% of people who have voted, who have cast their vote in this election. So Reform is trying to really compete with Isamaa, and also there's the Social Democrats, who are around third place, and Keskerakond, or the Center Party rather, and fourth. So I think it's everyone's trying to see how this is going to pan out, what the key issues are going to be, and how that'll translate into the gear up and then the elections in March of 27.
Right, so it's definitely a wait and see, certainly for the next few hours. But 72,000 mainly Russian speakers were excluded. I mean, surely that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, only Estonian nationals should be allowed to vote, shouldn't they? I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, this was definitely a move in light of broader geopolitical issues and the clear and present threat from the Russian Federation. So it's not just that they removed Russian speakers. It's just that those were the bulk of the people who were impacted by this. There was a constitutional amendment this past March which banned all non-EU residents from voting in the municipal elections. So that it was, because of the security environment amid tensions that are caused by the Kremlin.
But that does beg the question: before this resolution was passed, were non-EU citizens actually able to vote in Estonia's elections?
Only EU citizens of other countries could vote in municipal elections.
I see. Okay. Now, what has this exclusion meant for the relationship between the Russian-speaking minority and the rest of the Estonian population?
Well, I think that the big thing to take into consideration here is that this is not a homogenous group in terms of information space or media space, loyalty, or even stance in the country. I think that it's you do have some people who are susceptible to Kremlin propaganda, but you also have people who speak the language and who are very loyal to the Estonian state. And so I think that that's sometimes maybe not overlooked, but misunderstood outside of the Baltic states. So, for example, you have this issue with the Russian speaking population, where around 70%, around that number in Estonia, do have the citizenship. It might actually be less. I'm not actually sure on the figure, but there are some people who hold the so-called gray passports. That means that they're stateless permanent residents, more or less. And then you have others who are Russian citizens, but they're living on some kind of long-term permit in Estonia, and that's just in Estonia. It's much less in Lithuania. And in Latvia, they have a larger percentage of Russian speakers, and they have passed a law in 2020 to make it easier to gain the citizenship. But then that comes with language, as it should in any country. I mean, it should be that you speak very fluently or close to fluently the state language if you gain citizenship in any country.
Understood. Now, is there a risk that Russia may be using some of these Russian speakers in Estonia as part of a hybrid warfare strategy?
Of course, but that doesn't mean that all people are part of that either. For example, phasing out Russian language in public education, so moving schools to Estonian. This was accelerated after 2022. I mean, there was a push to do this even beforehand, and making sure that Russian state media is not accessible in Estonia. But to give you an example, you have things on both sides. So the director of Estonia's Narva Museum was sentenced in absentia to 10 years in a Russian penal colony because she put up a large poster on the Narva Museum, which is just across the river from the Russian side, across the Friendship Bridge, which likened Putin to Adolf Hitler and accused him of being a war criminal. Now, she also received a lot of hate messages on social media and stuff like that. So there are people who are very loyal to the state, as I mentioned, and it's not just simply a linguistic difference. But of course, there are people who are in criminal networks, or who are just out for cash, or for whatever reason, or they have an ideological predisposition towards the Kremlin, and they're more susceptible to carrying out hybrid attacks. And there have been instances where people have been apprehended by the police and the state security services, and there have been criminal proceedings against them.
Okay, now let's move on to the Satsebut, which is a 900-meter road that is on the border between Estonia and Russia, and actually enters Russian territory at 2 points. What's the tension around that area at the moment?
Well, I mean, I would say that on the one hand, of course, the tension is it's not nothing, and it's not it's not massive. It's just Russia being Russia, and people here are used to that, and the authorities acted fairly quickly because it was permanently closed recently, but it was a freely, this boot, there are 2 points of the boot that are freely accessible to go in and out of Estonia because it's a 1.15 kilometer road, which goes through several different Estonian villages in the Setomaa parish, right along the border, obviously. And what the Estonian government decided to do, given the current security situation, is close that and not reopen it, because just earlier this month, Estonian border guards noticed a larger than normal presence of Russian units there standing in the middle of the road. So that's just one of these hybrid provocations that I've been on the show and I've talked about, as have some of your other guests, that Russia just does this kind of stuff to test Estonia or Poland or other countries in the northeastern flank. So the prime minister announced that that would be closed indefinitely, and they put up fences and made it they closed it. And I think that this is, it's interesting because that was formalized, and I think early 2000s, around 3 or 4, and in a bilateral agreement. And Russia did reserve the right to carry out patrols, but there were proposals to swap pieces of land, but those were not finalized. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine really, nobody wants to have that happen anymore. So this is just Estonia doing exactly what they should be doing and acting swiftly and decisively, so that Russia can't bully or intimidate, which they'll continue to do. But that's why you ask about the tensions. And I have to say, people here are used to this now, unfortunately.
Yes, but surely one can't be blasé about this. I mean, this is exactly the strategy that Russia used when they invaded Crimea. The soldiers that you mentioned had no military insignia, so they were, I suppose, comparable to the little green men that were reported before the Russian invasion of Crimea. How seriously is the Estonian government taking the risk of an invasion by Russia?
Well, you can never rule out that possibility, and of course, I think that there's a really good balancing act, because you don't want a nervous population, you don't want to overreact, but you don't want to be dismissive either, because I would suspect that that's one of the things that Russia is monitoring with all of these hybrid incursions. When do people start getting used to it, in the sense that they stop doing the very types of things that NATO and the EU and the Baltic states have been doing when these types of things happen, which is acting swiftly and decisively and treating it for what it is, which is a clear and cut security issue. So I think that as of this very moment, it's not likely that they can redivert troops away from Ukraine. I think that the main MO right now for the Russians with this is to try and take attention away from their war of aggression in Ukraine. But I don't think that it's 100% inevitable that they would not build up and try to come back in a couple of years. But I'm not saying that they will either, because I think that NATO and countries in the region are starting to prepare for this right now by rearming, by making sure they have the right AI tools that are incorporated into their military. And in the Baltic states, you see the issue of conscription. The Latvians just recently brought it back. The Estonians have had it for a while, as has Finland. So the idea of being constantly ready and training like it's going to happen, even if we're not sure that it's going to happen, is, I guess, just a standard operating procedure in today's contemporary security environment.
Understood. Dr. Louis Wierenga, thank you very much, as always, for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
My pleasure, and you too. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Bye for now.